on finding victims of human trafficking. We've talked about human trafficking many times in the past, and as you know, that it's not uncommon for these prostitutes to be forced into prostitution by pimps, where they are emotionally and physically threatened and injured, where they're hooked up with drugs, where they're made to be prostitutes, and all of their earnings go back to the pimp. So our goal is to break that trend and to make sure that as a result of our efforts, we give them the opportunity to get away from their pimps, to get away from being trafficked, to make sure that we treat them at that point in time as victims rather than suspects of prostitution. So what's the best way to identify these folks? The best way to identify these folks is to have prostitution stings, and that's what we did. We arrested 61 people during this past undercover operation while looking for victims of human trafficking. But there's some interesting facts that I think you should have. These folks were between 18 and 68 years of age. One of them admitted to being HIV positive. 13 of them were married. Now, can you imagine going home and trying to explain to your wife how it is you ended up in the county jail charged with prostitution? And by the way, if you came up with a good story of why you were gone all night long, all you have to do is beat her to the road in the morning so she doesn't see your picture in the newspaper, okay? Then all you have to do is explain that some dog must have gotten the morning paper. One of the things that always bothers me, and I'm certain that it bothers each and every one of you, of the people we arrested, 11 of them were receiving government assistance. So while we're all out working very hard and paying our taxes, because that's what good American folks do, and while we don't mind our tax money going for government assistance for those who really need it, 11 of these people are taking our hard-earned money while they're not working a legitimate job and they're out prostituting. Think about that for a minute. And I'm going to focus on one gentleman in just a minute that was accepting government assistance while he was making $130,000 a year as a trainer. His job was to train car salesmen how to sell vehicles. 80% of the people that we contacted or contacted us as a result of this operation refused to show up. And do you know why they refused to show up? They refused to show up because they said, that's Polk County, and that sheriff and his detectives over there will put you in jail. Well, you know what? That just warms my heart. Because what's better than arresting those that commit crime is to prevent the crime from ever occurring in the first place. So when about 80% of the people who showed an interest in coming to our undercover operation backed out when they found out it was in our county, makes me excited. Because if you think these folks only do criminal acts such as prostitution or lewd conduct, you're wrong. We're going to go over in a few minutes the hundreds of previous charges that these folks have, and they range from very minor crimes all the way up to dangerous physical felony crimes. It's important to point out in a couple of minutes as I go through what I call my different poster child examples that this time we have a PGA pro who currently holds a card and is a pro instructor at one of the area's nice golf courses. We have a retired Baltimore police officer who was injured in the line of duty, so now he's a male escort. I guess if you can't be a police officer, you can always go into the male escort business, except for the fact you end up arrested. And it's very embarrassing when we see your Baltimore police shield and your retired card. In addition to that, we arrested a math tutor from Georgia. Yes, that's right. She works for the state of Georgia as a math tutor at a local technical college. But all of that didn't add up for her the other night. I had a delightful conversation with her saying, now you're a math tutor and you're here. How do you figure that? She laughed and she said, it doesn't add up. 332 criminal charges. So when you look at these folks, and for those who want to say, well, it's just a business relationship between consenting adults, that's wrong for a lot of reasons. One is that they have 332 charges. Many of them are not sex-related at all. Some of them are just very dangerous people. In addition to that, I truly think the spouses of those 11 people who were married are victims, as are their families. We know that one of the guys who showed up said, well, I'm here because my wife is 2.5 months pregnant, and you know, when I get home from work at night, she's really tired, and I just needed some companionship. And then he referred to himself as the victim. I think his wife and his child-to-be are the victims. We had another prostitute that showed up. She was 6.5 months pregnant herself. That was a pretty pitiful sight. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go through some of our shots here. Can y'all hear me good on this one? See, I want to make sure because I like everybody to hear me. In fact, the folks at work say that I have to pay them to listen to me. 30-year-old Matt Garrett. He is a retired Baltimore police officer. We arrested him. He had his shield and his ID card in the car with him. He came there as an escort. We think this is a terrible example, but you know what? If you violate the law, we put you in jail, regardless of who you are or who you report to be. Here's Eden. Eden's from Marietta, Georgia, and she's our math tutor. And she is also a part-time prostitute. She's apparently working for herself. And here's Scott Yates. He's 52 years of age. He's our PGA golf pro. And he bragged about how he had already engaged over 100 females he has met on social media sites for sex. That's not much to brag about. And then there's 68-year-old John Cokes. Now, as he came into the undercover room, he's talking to our undercover female, and he says, now, you need to be really, really careful because you girls could get arrested here in Polk County. That sheriff and his deputies will arrest you for prostituting in this county, as he's shown up in the motel room to have sex with these young ladies. Well, surprise, he got arrested. He's been married 13 years. At least as of last weekend, he was married 13 years. And then there's Gary Yulo. Gary Yulo is the gentleman who is making $130,000 a year. He's currently on government assistance. And he made the statement that his job was to teach car salesmen how to sell vehicles. And he told our captain, "You mean this is going to be on television?" And we go, "Yes, it is." He says, "Well, just take me out and shoot me." Obviously, we didn't fulfill his request, but if he happens to be married, his wife may do that. And then we got Guy Harrell. Guy Harrell is an interesting sort. He arrives at the undercover room and he knocks at the door. But when he knocks at the door, we're in the process of making another arrest. So our undercover male opens the door and looks at him, and he looks at our undercover male and walks away. Then our undercover female, who was supposed to meet with him, he arrived early, by the way, called him back and said, "Oh, that was just my husband, and he's on his way to the casino, and the dude comes back." And we ultimately arrest him. You know, when you knock on the door to go have sex with a woman and a guy answers the door, that's your sign. But he didn't learn very well. And then there's Adrian Hernandez. Adrian Hernandez showed up. He is an employee of the city of Bartow. He was in possession of a meth pipe. And then, of all things, he arrived and he wanted to barter. I know I was supposed to pay $75 for cash, but would you take my $30 winning scratch-off lottery ticket as part of the $75? Well, being the accommodating people that we are, we agreed to that. So we have a $30 winning scratch-off ticket plus his cash, and he's in the county jail unless he's bonded out trying to explain to his bosses at the city of Bartow why he's in trouble. This is a very interesting individual here, Jasmine Alvello. She's been arrested over 30 times prior to this investigation. She's been charged with 26 felonies, 42 misdemeanors, 13 failure to appears. She's also been in state prison between October of 12 and September of 13 for burglary, grand theft, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, as well as aggravated assault. And our detective said this was one mean woman. In addition to that, she had her 3-year-old with her. She was waiting in the car. She was the driver and part of the team while another lady came in to prostitute. The other lady was arrested as well. And then we had Sly Sampson. Sly told us that he was named by his mother after Sly and the Family Stones, or whatever that deal was back in the day. Sly Stone, whatever. Anyway, he's named after a recording artist. Our detective said, "Can you name any of the songs that Sly sang?" And he said no, so we played him some songs. Here's what's interesting about Sly. He's a registered sex offender out of Ohio. He's also subsequently been arrested for crimes against children in Georgia. He has an outstanding warrant in Georgia, but Georgia won't extradite him. I'm not sure what that warrant is for. He has 25 prior arrests to include 6 felonies, 14 misdemeanors, and he's been in prison. This is a bad guy. This is a dangerous guy. And we only have him on a very minor charge so he can be out in the community, and probably is by this time. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, what is this all about? This is all about looking for victims of human trafficking. And we've located 2 ladies during this operation who we strongly believe are victims of human trafficking. We are in the process of and working with counselors so that we can further investigate this. Once we determine that they are in fact victims of human trafficking, then obviously there won't be the prostitution charges. We'll expunge their records. We're making sure that they receive services at this time, and they're still under investigation to see how we can help them. When we do these operations, in addition to our detectives there, we actually had counselors that spent part of the week there with us in order to initially speak to folks like this that we identified. The fact that we had 80% of the people refuse to show up because they found out it was in Polk County, we see that as a win. The fact that we put 61 people in jail who violated the law in Polk County, we see that as a win. But the biggest win was the two young ladies who potentially will get out of this terrible trap that they appear to be in. Are there any questions?
Sir, when you say potential victims of human trafficking, what were their stories and the specifics of their stories that made them different from the other people?
Well, we're not releasing a lot of information, obviously, during our ongoing investigation, but they clearly indicated to us that they were forced to do what they were doing. In fact, one of the two that we're investigating told us several different stories, which is not uncommon with these folks. But what gives her story validity was not what we heard when we arrested her, because she was totally hostile, absolutely not interested in helping at all. But when she went to jail, there was a guy and a gal that came down there to bond her out. When they bonded her out, they began to say, okay, you lost the $250 that you were supposed to make on the deal tonight when you got arrested. Plus we had to post your bond, and here's what you owe us. Here's how much more money you owe us. And so as a result of that, you're going to have to go out and prostitute more and more and more. And she goes, hey, I'm over this. I went to jail tonight. And they said, no, you're not over it. You owe us money. And she said, I'm telling you, I'm finished. To which the guy looked at the other girl and said, beat her up. Well, as a result, she got out of the car on the parkway by herself. And that's when we were able, law enforcement found her on the parkway by herself, hooked her back up with us, and that's when she said, look, this thing's not going so well for me. I need help.
How did they find her? Did she call?
She was walking on the road.
Somebody just...
A law enforcement officer saw her walking on the parkway and stopped her, and they hooked them back up. But we've got to check out those stories. But that's what she told us, and that gives validity, because she had a very rigid set of statements that she gave us when we arrested her, with total non-compliance, which is not unusual at all. And then we had this episode occur, which falls in line with how we know human trafficking victims are treated. And then we're able to talk to her, and we think she's one of the two. The other one, I don't have the information on. Okay? Any other questions?
What about the others that you don't have their specific stories, but you had mentioned that part of the goal of this was to help them to get away from that circumstance?
That's correct.
What happens with them? Do you continue to stay involved with them?
We offer all of these ladies services, every one of them. I've got to tell you that these folks are hardcore. We didn't run into what we would call any rookies here. So we were able to at least get two of them to agree that it appears they may be victims of human trafficking. Certainly, we anticipate many more of them are victims and just won't cooperate and won't talk to us, and we'll continue to give them the opportunity to make a difference. One young lady, I'll give you this story, and we didn't pick her out because she's 19 years old, but as one of the poster children, because we think it's kind of a scary, sad reality. She came here. Her parents sent her to Florida to go to college. And the next thing you know, she hooks up with this exotic dancer. They've got her dancing in a club. She's turning tricks. We end up arresting her. Now she's an adult, but we call her Dad in Michigan. And he said, "You've got to be kidding me." I sent her to Florida to go to college. So she, the 19-year-old, had a boyfriend. The boyfriend says, "Hey, I've been trying to get her away from this environment, away from this person. He seems legit. He's talked to her dad. He says, I'm bonding her out. You need to come get her and take her back to Michigan." So we're not even counting that one.